All right, greetings, my brothers and sisters out there in the world. We got Bible study here for you today. Genesis 21. And the Lord visited Sarah as he had said. And the Lord did unto Sarah as he had spoken. Sarah was very old at this point, and she believed she was done with children. And the Lord said, I have something better than that for you. For Sarah conceived and bare Abraham a son in his old age, at the time of which God had spoken to him. And Abraham called the name of his son that was born unto him, whom Sarah bare to him, Isaac. And Abraham circumcised his son Isaac, being 8 days old, as God had commanded him. And Abraham was 100 years old, when his son Isaac was born unto him. And Sarah said, God hath made me laugh, so that all here will laugh with me. Laughter. Well, if you don't know the story of Sarah too well, understand that, forgive this expression, she was an old lady, okay? And if there was one of them record books way back here in this Old Testament time, she'd have won that award for bearing children in a very old age. At least this point in time in history, way back pre-Diluvian days, before God wiped man off the earth, except for Noah and his kiddies. They lived a really long time. You know, we're talking 900 years they lived, thereabouts. And so they probably had childbearing very late in life. But at this point in time, the life of man was around about 100 to 150 years old. So life expectancy has already begun to shorten up here, and by the time we get to David and the time of Jesus and our age, the life of man is right around 70, 80, 90, depending on how healthy that person is and what kind of gifts and how many days God gave that person. And but at this point in time, Sarah gave birth at a very old age for that era. And she said, who would have said unto Abraham that Sarah would have given children? For I have borne him a son in his old age. It's very interesting that she had the Lord speak to her through the tents, through Abraham. God told Abraham, this time next year, Sarah will have a son. Sarah overheard it, and she laughed. And the Lord basically said, why did you laugh? And she was afraid. She said, I didn't laugh. She did laugh. But this is a fulfillment of that. And at a very late time in life, Sarah then, again, nursed children that she had never before done. And so that's a miracle. That's quite miraculous, but it's very exceptional because there's a picture there of God didn't let anything happen to Abraham and Sarah until it was time. And they didn't have a child until it was time. And so with that, let's move along here. And the child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast the same day that Isaac was weaned. That was kind of a great celebration in those days, you know. The little kitty, you know, stops nursing, and you know he's entering into, you know, being a human being and kind of thing. And so they had a big party for him. They have parties for kiddies now, for all kinds of reasons, for, baptisms, confirmations, weanings, birthday parties. So we throw lots of parties for kids. I don't know if that really helps them turn out very good, but we give it to them anyway, all right? Anyway, remember, before this time period, Sarah had given Abraham one of her handmaids to be his wife, and then they bore Ishmael, if you remember that, because they didn't think God was going to move, so they thought they'd slip in their own little cure. Well, that didn't turn out so good. And we're going to see a little scenario with that. And Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, which she had borne unto Abraham, mocking. Wherefore she said unto Abraham, Cast out the bondwoman and her son, for the son of this bondwoman shall not be heir with my son, even with Isaac. And the thing was very grievous in Abraham's sight, because of his son. And God said unto Abraham, Let it not be grievous in thy sight, because of the lad, and because of thy bondwoman. In all that Sarah hath said unto thee, hearken unto her voice, for in Isaac shall thy seed be called. He was the child of promise. All right. Strangely enough, Abraham later has more children by, his other wives and so forth. And but God's plan is through Isaac, and that comes all the way down eventually to Israel and the promised Messiah and so forth. God's plan is to come through Isaac here. And also of the son of the bondwoman, that's Ishmael, will I make a nation, because he is thy seed. God has a plan for the Arab nation also. They also will be followers of Jesus Christ one day. Not now, some of them are. I've met a few that were converted Islamists that had turned to Jesus Christ, and I was very grateful to see that. It was wonderful. But for a whole, you have the Arab nations a little bit blind and deceived, as much of Israel. They're very much given over to the law instead of the promised Messiah. Verse 14 of Genesis 21. Abraham rose up early in the morning and took bread and a bottle of water and gave it unto Hagar, putting it on her shoulder, and the child, and sent her away, and she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. And the water was spent in the bottle, and she cast the child under one of the shrubs. And she went and sat herself down a long way off, as it were a bow shot. For she said, Let me not see the death of the child. Sometimes when things are sad and woeful, you can't see the forest for the trees, kind of the expression. And she was obviously disparaging in her heart. What in the world is she going to do? Being cast out from where she was with a little son and a water bottle. And now she's, at wit's end. And she sat over against him and lifted up her voice, and she wept. And God heard the voice of the lad, and the angel of God called to Hagar out of heaven and said unto her, What aileth thee, Hagar? Fear not, for God hath heard the voice of the lad where he is. Arise, lift up the lad, and hold him in thine hand, for I will make him a great nation. And indeed, God has. God has made very significant the Arab nations, and made very, very, very populated. There's many of them. And so God has blessed the Arab nation also. All right, we move along here. And we see this disparaging part of Hagar, and now God's going to open her eyes. Verse 19, And God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water, and she went and filled the bottle with water and gave the lad drink. And God was with the lad, and he grew and dwelt in the wilderness and became an archer. So he was kind of like a Legolas kind of type. And he dwelt in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took him a wife out of the land of Egypt. So she was Egyptian, and she wanted to have an Egyptian woman be his wife. And it came to pass at that time that Abimelech and Phicol, the chief captain of his hosts, spake unto Abraham, saying, God is with thee in all that thou doest. Now therefore swear unto me here by God, that thou wilt not deal falsely with me, nor with my son, nor with my son's son, but according to the kindness that I have done unto thee, thou shalt do unto me, and to the land wherein thou hast sojourned. And Abraham said, I will swear. If you remember earlier in our studies, Abraham had a bit of a rift with this gentleman, went into his kingdom and sort of imitated that Sarah was his sister. And in those days, they had the grandfather, he had many sons, and he had daughters, and they had sons, and they just basically called, them father, okay? And so in a long sense, he's basically said she's my sister, which she was her second, third cousin out, and that would have been called, a sister in those days. Just because that's just the way they did it, It was brother, sister, father, mother, They didn't mince words with all that 15th cousin stuff. Anyway, we move along here. And Abraham reproved Abimelech because of a well of water. Water was very important in those days, obviously. A well of water which Abimelech's servants had violently taken away. And Abimelech said, I was not, who hath done this thing? Neither didst thou tell me, neither yet heard I it, but to this day. And Abraham took sheep and oxen and gave them unto Abimelech. So they're making a little covenant here, passing animals back and forth and so forth. And both of them made a covenant. And Abraham set 7 ewe lambs of the flock by themselves. And Abimelech said unto Abraham, What means these 7 ewe lambs which thou hast set by themselves? And he said, For these 7 ewe lambs shalt thou take of my hand, that they may be a witness unto me that I have did this well. Basically, it's like a covenant. Like, here's the money, here's the animals. I dug this well. It belongs to me. You need to believe it. Wherefore he called that place Beersheba, because there they swear both of them. Swear as in making an oath. Thus they made a covenant at Beersheba. Then Abimelech rose up, and Phicol, the chief captain of his host, and they returned into the land of the Philistines. And Abraham planted a grove in Beersheba, and called there on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God. And Abraham sojourned in the Philistines' land many, many days. So we have kind of a short chapter there. Very, very clear that if God has you in, let's say, hold position, you believe God has promised you, children, ministry, job, hang tight. Don't resolve the things for God. If you're a man, you need to work. You need to go out and get a job, any job. Just get that job, and get working, provide for your family. Don't wait for welfare and food stamps and all that. If it happens, you have to take them. That's fine, but don't let that be your sustenance for your life. Take what you need, but then get out there and be a man. Okay, and work and provide for your family, and so that you have something to share with others that have need. And but You know, if you're in a situation and you say, well, God didn't answer my prayer, I'm just going to go do this. You know, go ahead and work your job. You need to do that. Don't marry a non-believer. You know, if you're thinking, well, God promised me I'm 30 years old and I still don't have a mate or a spouse or whatever, just wait. God will bring a godly man for the woman and a godly woman for a godly man. He wants you to marry equally. He wants you to be equally yoked. A man marries a woman and they become one flesh. And as you, as a born-again Christian, he wants you to marry a born-again Christian and nothing else. Nothing else. Don't fall short. Don't fall short. Marry somebody familiar and in love with Jesus Christ, just like you. And I don't know how we got there, but that just seemed to just fall right in there. Anyway, next time we hook up in the Bears Gym here for Bible study, we'll be in Genesis chapter 22. And with that, God bless you folks from the Bears Gym. We'll see you.